practice.
You to give him back. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to start an event exactly on time, 7 p.m. with a full house. I know this is Love for Saeed and I'm delighted to be part of that. My name is Kartika. I'm the publisher at Westland and Context, which has published this wonderful book. And welcome all of you to the official launch of this book. I worked with Saeed before when I was in another publishing house and we published a novel. And it's a novel that one deeply loved for its ability to look back and tell stories about the past and about different cultures with such erudition that you quite forgot that this was a novel and not a book that was meant to inform and educate and thrill, all of which it did. From then to here, it's a completely different narrative, but I think the truth-telling that that book did, and this one does, are in some ways similar. The narratives come straight from the heart. You can feel the wisdom and tell that this comes from many years of thinking about that 500 word, waiting for Saeed to arrive. The flight had landed, he'd been picked up, he came to the festival. It was this beautiful setting where conversations were about to start, sessions are going on. And I said, Saeed, you know, there's this session going on, shall we go in and attend it? And he looked at me and then he looked at the sky and he said, but the sun is going down. Isn't there a bar somewhere? And I said, okay.
Thank you very much, Kartika. And in this particular instance, one call from Saeed, and there was no question of not saying yes. Firstly, it's not often that I get to see him, so that was that. He's a traveler. He lives in two different parts of the country, and so this was one of great opportunity. Also, it's been a while since I've had occasion, and this is my personal selfish reason, I've had occasion to sit with him and discuss several things. I know a few of these things that he has written about because he has been sharing with me. In fact, one particular, I knew I was looking forward to it, and when this invitation came, there was no question. This is an easy read because it's written very fluently, but it's also a somewhat, I won't say disturbing, but definitely a thoughtful read. It makes you think about a lot of things. It's about memory. Nostalgia, Saeed, it's a bit about nostalgia, I must say, that you are in your romantic phase also here. But it's also about loss. So these are some of the overall themes that have come through, but essentially these are small pieces about, quite honestly, I have a feeling that many of us sitting here and elsewhere have been thinking about too. About what the country used to be, what the world used to be, will we go from here. At this moment in India's history, in world history also, there are many disturbing things. This is not a prognosis, it's certainly not a dissection or an analysis. It's one person's view, but the way it is done, where Saeed talks about everything, about his childhood, about growing up, about getting involved in seeing world issues around him. These are issues that I may say we all grew up with, a lot of people grew up with, and for a newer readership will, but it's a personal view. And Saeed, that was my first question. That's a personal view. You've written about everything from the building you grew up in, Fonseca Mansion, which I understand
Is it on? You know, it sounds eclectic perhaps. Excuse me, sorry. Smartphone, I don't like smartphones. Always smart. I want to see on smart. No, it looks eclectic, but it was a way of कहते हैं ख्यालों को समेटना. I never was localized. I was always an internationalist in my soul, the way I was brought up. So therefore, I tried to see things both locally and internationally simultaneously. And the point is, how do you do it? How can you construct a novel? Sorry, I will take that word. Construct a book that can contain the international and the local, and in that give it some kind of a coherence. It's a deeply political book, but backed by, I think, moments of lyricism, moments of a sense of loss, but by and large, the overarching idea is political. Now that was the attempt in this book. How far I've achieved it, I'm not so sure. I never am sure. But to me, these are constructs of mine. I can see myself like, I don't write a book. They're installations in my mind. And then I put them together, and I hope, like hell, they become linear to my reader, so that they can somehow hold on to it, follow it. Because that's the way I see things. Because that's the only way I can come to terms with the world as I try to decode it. This is the only construct that I can use in terms of literature. That's the way I've functioned. So I hope I've answered your question.
No, there's no one answer to it, because we want
of hope.
There's a chapter called Hope at the end.
It has the audacity of hope, because it has, in these times of hate, where hate is the flavor of the times we live in, and is a marketable commodity. It's so life-affirming to find a compassionate voice erupting from these pages, and that too from a filmmaker made movies of anger. And in fact, I was telling Aziz, कि Aziz यार ये फिल्में ऐसी बनाता था इसकी इतनी intimate, warm, compassionate जो एक आवाज है, why couldn't that surface in his movies? And I think it reminds me of a saying, there was a Jewish rabbi who said something when I was young and stupid, I used to be dazzled by eloquence. But as I gone older, the only thing that touches me is human kindness. I think what is unique about this book, that even when you tear the opponent to shreds, you have the ability to reflect. You have the ability to look at your wants and you question whether you have rubbed them the wrong way or you have been overtly critical when they should perhaps be applauded. So I think this is a very unique book, and as I entered, I said, this is a very good book. Alim Bakshi Sahab used to say, कि भैया किताब अगर दोस्त की है तो अच्छी है, दुश्मन की तो बहुत बुरी है. तुम दोस्त तो अच्छी है ही, मगर this is an extraordinary book because it has the audacity of hope, and it looks unflinchingly at the reality. It doesn't. It reminds me of Sahir Saab's song, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी, उसका एक मुखड़ा था जो इस्तेमाल नहीं हुआ था, जो हमने हमारी फिल्म बेगम जान में इस्तेमाल किया था, कि वो सुबह हम ही से आएगी. वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी नहीं, वो सुबह हम ही से आएगी. So here we are at this moment saying, we will bring that dawn which has, because we can't allow people to wrench away the soul of India by anyone. And let us not confuse, no matter what mandate a political party gets, the nation is not the government. The nation's soul is much bigger than any government. This is what resonates in every page of this book, and that is why I think this book is an extraordinary book. This is an extraordinary book.
So actually, he said something in the beginning which, Ritu, I was going to ask you anyway. The humanity is very clear. Is this, you think, a message for, as he also ended, is this a message for today? Is this a book about today? It's a book about yesterday, but is it about today?
Yeah, very much so, because for me, I think it's one of the most political books I've read in a very, very long time. And it's political not only in the context of, talking about the manufactured divide or what the idea of India was. And I think that comes out very clearly in the mansions and in the growing up the community. But also it links up the lynching of, in 93, I think you talk about the possible linking of that milkman, which is there, the lynchings which are going on now, the issues of stopping at a grave to pay your respect without knowing the community of that grave. For me, that was something which is very, very essential. And the defining structure, and this is something I find will also appeal very, very much, not only to people like us who are, so-called, read a lot or theorize a lot, but also to a lot of young people. And the defining structure or the defining element of this book is really, I think, the poetry of the collective. That is something which comes out for me very, very strongly. So at one level, you have the hope component, but it's also like Sufism एक होता था ना हमारा, आपने भी बोला कि तू ही दर्द है और तू ही दवा है. So it's in the questions which you have raised where I find the answers. So it's not so much hope, despair for me as a reflection of a reality and a philosophical, poetic reflection of a reality. That is the.
But to think that it's all coming out, tumbled out from you in the pages of this one volume. Surely there are many volumes possible, but the fact that you put it all in one means that many of these things have been inside you for years. Whether as romantic notions or warmth or human this, or there are troubling questions here, of course, but they've been with you for years. When you write about what you felt about standing in Vietnam, or about Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, or indeed about that old man who was on a cycle during the riots in '93. And I must tell you, when he's talking about memory and amnesia, We are all from this city. The fact of the matter is this city has forgotten 92-93. It has completely forgotten it. The anniversary, 25th anniversary came and went, and there was no recording of it. So, all that, is it the distillation of years of thought that is going back to what I had asked, but again I need to ask that. How did it happen?
It doesn't mean it's forgotten. This is a manufactured forgetfulness. And this is what my whole thing is about, it's manufactured forgetfulness so that we can go on to the next riot. We can do another regime change, we can invade another country, let's get involved with the tattoo on Virat Kohli's shoulder or Salman Khan's chest, you know. Let's get engaged with that, or the mansion of an Ambani. What is the cost of it? You know, or a party thrown by somebody, we get engaged. And this is stuff that is being dished out, which keeps us occupied.
Right? But all great political movements or religious movements or artistic leaps have taken place in the womb of loneliness. So I think in the heart of loneliness, perhaps as you inch toward what is called the wisdom, midlife of wisdom, the wisdom years, this book flowered from you. And I think what it does make one point is that Saeed is the most relevant voice. It's not an old man lamenting about the time that was. He passionately engages with the stream of life and says, I will lead from the front and I will dare you, I will not walk there and I will change the course of where things are going. And I think that is what I applaud in Saeed, because he comes to your office, walks up and says, I want you there. He comes with this book. And when I open this book, what staggers me is his insight, his simplicity, and his passion, and his ability to hope. And I think we need to believe in that those who have made hopelessness into, the be-all and the end-all need to understand that it's the brave who can hope. Because hope compels you to engage. Hopelessness is a submission. कि कुछ नहीं हो सकता हमसे, क्या है उसको ऊपर से decide हुआ पिछले जन्म में किया है, the same narrative being dished out, you can't do it. Here you are through this book, and I had the privilege to meet this guy called Muntazar Al-Zaidi, whom you have mentioned. The guy in that fascinating discussion between the gangster and the journalist, and you come to that guy who we did a play called The Last Salute, where we called him because we based a play on his biography. And he came, he's an Iraqi young man, he came straight and he landed and he went to the Rajghat and he paid respect to Gandhi and kept on talking about Gandhi. And I asked him only one thing, I said, Muntazar, before you hurled that shoe, what happened? He says, I came to terms that they're going to kill me. They're going to execute me. But when I was sitting down there, I had my hand to travel from year to year. This journey from year to year, and to pick it up and hurl it, defined who I was, because there I was doing the job of voicing the anguish of the Iraqi people. And he said, I have never felt more powerful, because I felt that I was perhaps born for this. I think this book in a way does that. It does what Muntazar did. And those who feel that that book was, that the shoe throwing image was just a demonstration of some frustrated journalist, and in fact they turned it around and said, wow, look at the accommodated spirit of George W. Bush, and this is democracy. But I think that did succeed in amplifying what the world media failed to do. They did not bring the truth of what was playing out in the hearts of the people. So I met a CNN journalist who said, we are guilty of not amplifying what's going on there. I think that one journalist, by daring to risk being killed, achieved through that gesture. And that is how it has been found a place in his book. So I think this book will create an impact. It will move things, because there are millions of people out there who will feel connected to this book.
Ritu, actually there is an interesting link with it before, if you could just address that also. That he writes about that Iraqi statue coming down and says that the truth was being manufactured because there were only 100 odd people standing there. But the focus was so tightly kept that the statue coming down looked as though masses of Iraqis.
Yeah, this is, in fact, the title when I was going through, it was more, and after I went through the book, it's in the age of amnesia, but it's a manufactured amnesia, and which is what I think is trying to be broken. So it's an appeal in a way to break the veils, to move the veils, to see what is going on behind. And for me, it brought back, of course, what happened there, the role of the media, etc., etc. But also how our minds are diverted in different kinds of ways, like by some kind of a different action going around. We're so busy laughing at that clown Trump, that basics, break the veils, see the past, learn from the past, but look at the future. And that's why I hope it's translated into Marathi and different languages, because it's an appeal for different people to come together and different sections to come together.
A few other places. But why don't we see mass protests? Why don't we see people coming out on the streets and saying, this was a country in which people came out on the streets against the Vietnam War at one time. But today, the protests that happened last in this city by Dalits and tribals, these were the two last big protests. This is a city which is being run very, very badly, but nobody is coming out on the streets and protesting. Are we becoming apathetic? Are we becoming busy? Are we becoming saying kisi koi aur karega? Or are we becoming so preoccupied by success, material success, that we think doesn't matter? Why do you think that is happening?
My personal take is, I think because most of us belong to a class, a social class of people where we're not really concerned about the future in a sense. But when you look at 90% of the people of this country, I think there's an incredible fear of the present. Where are we going to go? In terms of how do you live? How do you get a job? How do you survive? And when you realize something very simple, that education does not pay any longer. This entire myth of education, I mean, you can see it across the board that go to any cooperative society, housing society, and all the liftmen happen to be from UP or behind. Some of them are graduates. What's happened in the present? There is just no hope for the future in a sense with these people, and therefore the terror of the present. There's a terror of living in the present for all of them. And then what is my fear? There is anger, and my fear is how will it be channelized? Because you will find students who are questioning the state of affairs. This is a fact. It's not being revealed in the press. This is true. All over the country. In Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, in Maharashtra, in Bengal, in UP, Bihar, ho raha hai. Ho raha hai. And I don't think, Gujarat mein ho raha hai. Ye ho raha hai. So to say that the youth or the young people today are not, they are. Only saw it in the news.
Actually, you've just brought in something that I thought the others would say something. Why is the media behaving in the way it is?
It has to, it has no choice.
Well, sections of the media.
It has no choice. I mean, you have this revealed.
In my journey through life, I had once met a very big media baron. And I was ranting and raving about the apathy of the newspaper towards the social issues which were there in that region. So he was amused by my anger, and he, after some time when we went to his room, he closed the door, and he said something to me which stayed with me. He said, Mahesh साहब, मैंने 500 करोड़ रुपए लगाए हैं ताकि वो 1000 करोड़ रुपए हो। अब आपको अगर लगता है कि मैं यहाँ पर समाज की सेवा में वो सारे 500 करोड़ को आग लगा दूंगा, तो ये आपकी बेवकूफ़ी है। ये मेरा जरिया है, हम दुकानदार हैं, इट्स द बिजनेस ऑफ न्यूज़। तो हमारा पेशा आपसे बिल्कुल अलग है ही नहीं। ये आप हम पे थोप रहे हैं और हमको एक्ट करना पड़ता है कि हम हाँ आपसे अलग है. In fact, I was quite surprised that in a television debate, Mr. Nitin Gadkari was asked by Mr. Awasthi कि साहब आपने ये गोवा का कैसे कर दिया. इसे देखिए साहब, अभी महेश साहब आए हैं, विद्या बालन जी आए हैं, अब ये दिल्ली के दौरे क्यों कर रहे हैं? अपनी पिक्चर को बॉक्स ऑफिस हिट करने के लिए ना. तो बॉक्स ऑफिस ही चाहिए और फिल्म को बनाते वक्त बहुत कुछ ही बोलेंगे, फिल्म में ये है वो मिलेंगे. तो हमारा भी सत्ता है पूरा. तो मैंने कहा गडकरी साहब बड़ी खुशी हुई इस बात के जान के कि हमको लगा आप हमसे अलग है, हमाम में सब नंगे. तो शायद बचपन में हमको माँ ने पढ़ाया था कि हमसे ये अलग है. राजनेता जो है वो हमारी तरह ओछा नहीं है. हम तो दुकानदार हैं भैया, हम तो भांड विरासी, हम तो नाचते हैं मेकअप करके, जो जैसा गाना बोलोगे हम गा देते हैं. तो इसलिए हम भी अलग नहीं है आपसे. हमारे लिए and I found it rather refreshing that he said that in a public space. तो ये तो अब हम खुलेआम बोलेंगे कि the pursuit of power is the be all and the end all, and the values that you keep on talking about, if you keep on raising it, then I will look at you with disdain and say, how naive he is. This is the real world. So I think that is what is the issue. And individually, I think we all know that we are living in rather overwhelming times. Each one of us does not know in a blink of an eye, the world changes. Individually, I can't do a damn thing, Siddharth. Collective action means war. Means getting into some political party, organizing, getting a cadre together, my boys against your boys. That is what it boils down to. And then it inevitably leads to the same thing. The key people today who are in the seat of power were saying that we will get rid of the tyrants who have played hell with you. So you want to get rid of them with your kind of ideology. So I think, meanwhile, the issue that we need to look at is the values that he keeps on raising. Irrespective of the political party that comes to power, can we have the values which kind of really defined us?
Those values are important.
Are important, and what the hell are you going to do in order to protect that? And I think books and writers and seers and thinkers, who social engineers actually, or social artists as they say, who do not only paint on the canvas but go and paint on the world outside, are essentially committed to doing this. And I think that is what is the tearing need of the time. And I see, yes, there is gloom and doom and a sense of deepening helplessness and a kind of growing cynicism which is there. But that also comes from a sense, a kind of a cowardice. You know, somebody asked Mother Teresa, हमसे कुछ नहीं होगा. You are very great, यार. हमसे नहीं होगा. She said, come on, by calling me great, you're actually escaping from the responsibility of doing things yourself. You don't mean a damn thing. So I think if Saeed can do it, anybody can do it. And I think that's where the hope is ignited by this.
I think there's a lot going. Of course, the role of the media. I mean, that's why we read Wire.
Mood of upliftment. I'm very glad. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Exactly.
No, you must remember that I happen to be, I'm over the hill. I'm on the other side of the hill in terms of age. Purely, when you see young people who start questioning, it started with the fact when we had this agitation at the Film and Television Institute. And then you had those writers giving back when the attack on Muhammad Akhlaq and giving back the Sahitya Academy. What was this? The protests that started the FTR, then went into JNU, then went into, and you realize that you aren't alone. And suddenly it was at the NIDs, then it was in Bangalore, then it was in Chennai, Ahmedabad, it's all over the place. And then you realize something very simple, that there is this anger which is being voiced, which is being ignored. What was your question actually before that? Yeah, and then you had people like suddenly Kanhaiya. He catches the imagination of people, but have you noticed what's happened to him? Media-wise, removed. Media-wise, he's best removed from the scene because he is a person, a young man who can lead. He's a leader of men and women. You see the potential, and therefore such men are dangerous. And now he'll be called Tukre Tukre. He'll be called all kinds of things because there is a genuine fear for this kind of person. Also, don't forget Jignesh Mirwani. Incredible people. Incredible. And then that Umar Khalid. What are they being branded as? You branded them already, Maoist, the urban Maoist. Look what the branding is. And then, now luckily these people are, they are in public awareness. Or a Rana Ayub in public awareness. What happened to those 6 guys who were picked up and just shot dead in Madhya Pradesh? And they were called anti-national terrorists. 6 laborers, daily wage earners picked up on 6 spots, something called anti-national, threat to national security, and shot dead. And then they planted weapons on these chaps. What do you
call mass consumption compels you to cater to the lowest common denominator. That is what we have, grown up with. Unless you endorse, perpetuate and defend the value system, you will not find mass success. So any alternate thought needs an alternate platform, and those platforms are disappearing. But there is a hope that with the digital age descending on us, that alternate voice will finally percolate down. I think there is a change which is taking place. You can't see it, but there is a rage which is fermenting. Oasis somewhere in this desert.
Don't put too much this. I think we've covered a lot of ground and we've intrigued people about this. There will be questions. So I have only one request. Keep the questions short and tell us who you're asking for. Before that, Saeed, there was a question, there was a thought that I think we can manage 3 or 4 minutes. Would you like to read some?
This is like the news now that they're back into your face. What's your opinion about it?
What do you feel? You've just come out of a house collapse or something. What do you feel?
No, you're lying in a hospital bed. You're recovering from shock and trauma that might come to your face. What do you? It's incredible. Who terrorists think?
I think make life simpler.
It's called A Tale of Reaching Out. A few years ago, I was driving on a dusty road in the Gulbarga district of Karnataka when I noticed some graves under a huge shady tree in a vast empty field. The image was surreal because the tree seemed to be flourishing in a parched landscape. It was as though its only function was to protect the graves from the blazing heat. The image of the tree and the graves returned to me. As we neared the truck, I asked my chauffeur, Man Friday Ayub, to stop the car in reverse. My wife Jennifer, sitting at the back of the car, was surprised. Why are we reversing? She asked. Those graves look so incredibly lonely, so I'm going to pay them a visit. Towards the graves. I looked at the graves solemnly for a while and then up at the tree. In this desolate landscape, the graves seemed to be in the perfect shady spot. Who were the people buried here? The graves did not look very ancient. Were they members of a family? Who did this empty and dusty field belong to? Were they descendants of the people in the graves? Since the grave looked somewhat abandoned, I also wondered if there was a caretaker to look after them. As these thoughts crossed my mind, I noticed that the truck driver and the cleaner had also joined us and was standing next to the graves in silence. We stood for some more moments
So questions quickly.
We spoke about 500 crores being turned into 1,000 crores. And when we were questioned about in terms of films, why can't film be made to take up this cause? You're back to the same thing, 550 crores in the film, I have to recover money out of it. So how is it any different?
No, we have no illusions. We are in the business of entertainment, and we never in the mainstream, at least the industry that I joined, where we made popular films, which was committed to getting bums on the seat. Our be-all and the end-all was box office. We never claimed to ourselves. I think Saeed represented an alternate stream, which made films which was not committed to that ideology. one tried in one's lifetime to make movies like Saransh and Arjun Sakhun, which kind of did for personal gratification. But the business of entertainment is committed only to getting numbers, and I don't expect the news business to be different. But as I said, like I imagined Mr. Gadkari was different from me. I imagine that the newspaper that came to my house was run by people with conscience, and they kept the principles before profit, till I discovered, no, that's something which they sell. They are exactly like us. So that's why I said, which I told to Nitin Gadkari sir, "Hamam mein sab nange." He said, "Haan, sab nange." We all want power over profit is more important. Principles are not so important.
I think somebody there, yeah, please. But I think we can have the discussion.
We can have the discussion.
आइए आइए फोटो फोटो
आइए
इस काम के लिए आया आओ
क्या है फोटो ऑप है Is this a photo op?
Take my copy back from him. Oh, I
My